We're going to go ahead and get started today in the interest of time. Hopefully we have most of the grantees here. We're super excited to have you here with us today, and very thankful that you would take time out of your day to join us. Krista, you want to go to the next slide? I want to welcome you. I want to let you know that we had 49 applications for the Prevention Block Grant. I should have introduced myself. I apologize. I'm Tanya Albornoz. I'm the coordinator for prevention here at the Utah State Board of Education. And I'm going to let my team introduce themselves too. Clarissa and Kathy, do you want to come off mute and introduce yourself really fast?
Sure. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Clarissa Stebbing. I am a prevention specialist here at the State Board of Education and am primarily responsible for substance use prevention and have been helping to coordinate the block grant.
And hi, everybody. My name is Kathy Davis. I'm also a prevention specialist, and I primarily work with suicide prevention, parent seminars, and the like. And thank you so much for taking the time out to come and be with us today.
Thanks. Thanks, Clarissa and Kathy. We are very grateful to have you here. And I was just starting in to tell a little bit of background about the Prevention Block Grant. We had 49 applicants or applications from LEAs for the block grant money. We had just over $11 million in requests, and we were able to award 24 districts and charters. It's a good mix. And we have a total of $3.8 million. So we were able to award 24 of those 49 applicants. We know and recognize that many of you were not awarded your full amounts, the full amounts that you requested through your applications. But it was really our desire to be able to award as many districts and charters as possible in order to help with the prevention efforts. So it was a monumental task for my team, and I'm grateful for all the work they put in, but we did need to go through all the applications and requests with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that they were good prevention practices, evidence-based practices, and we're so grateful to you all for your patience with us and for your willingness to be workable and to decrease your total requests to make sure that we were in line with the requirements of the statute and the rule. So thank you so much. And if you have any questions about the process overall, feel free to reach out to us. Let's move into what we're going to talk about today. So today's agenda, we're gonna quickly talk about technical assistance that we can provide to you. We're going to talk about reimbursements. We're going to talk about what the requirements will be for your end of the year reports. We'll talk about some collaboration opportunities. We'll have some opportunities for you to share with each other and collaborate with each other. We'll do some share outs and then we'll leave time at the end of today for some questions and answers. So really fast, we want to talk about technical assistance. So the statute that governs the Prevention Block Grant requires us at USBE to provide each of you with technical assistance that's tailored to your specific prevention needs and targeted professional learning opportunities in evidence-based prevention practices. So because of that requirement, we wanted to provide to you some information about what offerings we currently have. So do you want to go to the next slide, Clarissa? So if you don't know, we are holding monthly webinars. It's on the third Wednesday of the month from 12 to 1. And those webinars are really focused and centered on the USBE protective factor framework that we've been trying to implement. It's an evidence-based framework. We've also included a couple of other topics that we've had a lot of requests from LEAs. We did how to increase attendance webinar. We also did a suicide prevention webinar during October on Suicide Prevention Month. But we wanted to make sure that you knew about these webinars, that you were invited and have an opportunity to register so that you can participate. We also have the recordings of past webinars on our website that you can, on our YouTube channel, excuse me, so that you can go and watch those if you'd like to and you weren't able to participate. And we're posting those recordings every month. So if you're interested in any of those, feel free to go to our prevention team website and you can find links to those. We are also planning on holding in-person prevention workshops in April. We will be traveling to 6, I believe, different locations throughout the state. My team is coming to you so that you don't have to travel so much. And we will we'll be providing a prevention workshop. It's a 1-day workshop. I think the schedule is from 9 to 3:30. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, Clarissa, but that the intention of those workshops is to help you is to help make sure that you have an actual day to work on and refine your prevention comprehensive prevention plans. So that's one of the things that we're going to be specifically talking about and focusing on are your comprehensive plans and giving you an opportunity to have conversation and dialogue with us around those, and then actually have a work session as you think through your comprehensive prevention plans in relation to implementation science, the protective factor framework, and all of those evidence-based prevention practices. So if you're interested in registering for those, that you can find the link to register and the information about those workshops on our USBE prevention website. And the next thing we want to do is because, again, we're required to provide you with these opportunities for, I just lost my slide deck. With the opportunities for technical assistance, we want to get your input right now. So we're hoping that you can put in the chat any topics that you're interested in us doing a webinar about or professional learning about. And we have some suggestions here on the slide, but we want to hear from you about what topics would be of most interest to you, and we want to accommodate those throughout the year. We're willing to add extra webinars to in addition to the monthly webinar, if there's 1 or 2 topics that this group would be interested in, or we can even hold separate trainings for just this group. So if you wouldn't mind just taking a couple minutes to put into the chat which training topics would be useful for you. And you don't have to pick from the ones on the slide. You can also choose ones that may not be represented here. Okay. Looks like, let's see if I can see a few. Trauma-informed practices, bullying prevention. I'm getting a few things. Okay. So you please feel free to continue putting ideas into the chat as we go throughout the webinar today. We would really love to accommodate as many of these as possible and even use some of these to start planning our next year series if we're not able to get those in this year. So, okay, let's go to the next slide. So we also wanted to just remind you, if you have a request for group training for your LEA, we have our training request portal that you can put in a request specifically for your school, your district. As long as there's more than 10 people that will be attending the training, we're able to bring that training to you at your district or school. So if you want to complete this form to request specific trainings for us to come out to you, please feel free to do that. That's also on our webpage. You can find that link. Next slide. Then lastly, we want to provide you with some collaborative meetings. So as a group of grantees under the Prevention Block Grant, we really decided as a team this year that we want to provide you with some specific meetings, but we wanted to get your input as to how frequently those meetings will take place. So on this slide, you see sort of how we envision setting up the agenda. We would just do 5 minutes to talk about overall grant and administration and answer any questions that you need from USBE. And then we would have one of you present 10 to 15 minutes, how you're doing, what you're doing with your prevention block grant funds, and how that's working for you. We really want you to be able to collaborate together and hear from each other. We feel that those are the most valuable uses of your time for these collaborative meetings. And then we wanted to have 20 to 30 minutes opportunity for you to have small group discussions with other LEAs about how funds are being utilized. So we would put you into smaller groups and you can talk about what's been successful for you, what are some of your barriers, and how you can overcome those things. And then 5 to 10 minutes to come back to the large group and share out. So this is how we envision it's sort of like a community of practice. And we'd love to provide these collaborative opportunities for you. So Clarissa, on the next slide, we have a QR code with a short poll. Yeah. So if you want to just scan that really fast, we have a poll to help us decide how frequently we can hold those meetings for you, how frequently you guys can take time out of your day to do those or would like to do those. So you could just take a minute.
Clarify something. I've just
Yeah.
launched a Zoom poll, and
Oh,
then the QR code that's on this slide, that's actually so you can sign up for the very first one.
oh,
But
thank you.
yeah, just a little clarification there. It looks like we have a few responses coming in. You should have a poll that shows up on your screen asking
Sorry
about
for the,
how.
yeah,
Then you
sorry
get
for the
real,
confusion.
yeah, no worries. And then you get real-time data on how often everyone is interested in holding a meeting or not.
Interesting. So it's looking like
It's
every other
close.
month. Yeah, it's close. Every other month or quarterly.
A few more, 10 more seconds to get final responses in, and then I'll close the poll.
I'm happy that no one chose I'd rather not participate. Okay. So it looks like we have every other month being the most replies and quarterly being the second most. And as Clarissa said, I'm sorry for the confusion, but our first one will be February 24th. And then it looks like maybe we'll do one every other month after that. And if you can't attend, that's okay. We'll make sure to record them and make them available to you. But it wouldn't be as rich of an experience because you wouldn't be able to collaborate with your fellow grantees, but you would at least be able to get the information from the LEA that presents. So looks like we'll consider doing those every other month. Thanks, everyone. So I think now I'm going to turn the time over to Kathy, and she's going to talk about some reimbursement issues.
Hi, everyone. So let me go ahead and go through some of the guidelines for reimbursements. So because this is a 2-year grant, all funds have to be spent by June 30th, 2026. That's not to say that you can't submit for a reimbursement before that time. So we really would encourage that you submit your receipts at least quarterly so that there's really a lot of time to resolve any issues if you're having a hard time with Utah grants or wondering if something is reimbursable or whatever. So one thing that we really want to emphasize is that we've reviewed all of your applications really, really carefully. And because we had so many requests, we wanted to make sure that we funded your top priority items. And so what we'll do is as you submit your reimbursements, we oftentimes will go back to your application and we want to make sure that what was approved within your application actually matches what you are seeking reimbursement for. And then if we could put food like bolded and it's not an allowable expense, and then if I could just, take a loudspeaker to say food is not an allowable expense. I wish that we could provide food, but we are absolutely restricted. And so because we have stewardship over these funds and because we want to make sure that these funds continue flowing to all of you, we have to abide by the guidelines. And one of those is food's not an allowable expense. But here's some ways that you can still provide food. And so what you'll have to do is maybe be creative, reach out to your community. If you're partnered with your PTA, for instance, your PTSA, and see if they may be able to provide food, or look to community providers that may want to sponsor one of your events. So that's why we really want to emphasize that this prevention effort is really a community-based effort. So go on to the next slide. So what we wanted to do is give you some examples of what we want you to do. So when you submit your receipt, you'll just upload those receipts to Utah Grants. And what's really helpful for us is if you write on your receipts the item listed on your application, and denote that it's from the Prevention Block Grant. So for this one, for instance, this is just taken from, it looks like it's taken from their ledger, whether it's QuickBooks or something like that. But they just said that this was for MTSS training for, the substitutes. And then it is geared toward the Prevention Block Grant. So we want to know that, if you are reimbursing for stipends, that's what we're reimbursing for, because anytime we go through this, we go back to your application and make sure that it matches up. Go on to the next one. Here's another example of some of the things that you can do description wise. So this is really, really helpful to all of us. And I'm just going to kind of briefly read the description. It says that USBE approved human trafficking prevention and awareness training, and then 3 SGF training videos and content covering HT 101, what is human trafficking, and so on and so forth. So that is just really wonderful, because we may be audited and we need to make sure that everything has been is acceptable, and that we're abiding by everything that we are accountable to. So is there another slide, or is that it, Clarissa?
Kathy, I just wanted to mention that there's a question in the chat from Stephanie.
Oh, yeah.
So if funds are used to pay staff for a specific program, how do we reflect that as a receipt?
Okay, so what you would do is you would just say Prevention Block Grant, like that heading right there. And then if it's a specific program, just say that it's under the purview of the Prevention Block Grant. So you would just say, just write out that specific program. And, sometimes you can refer back to like the funding code if you want to, but if we can just go ahead and do that checking on our end. So, Stephanie, did I answer your question okay? Oh, does this also apply to funding a specific position? Yes. Yeah. If you are funding a position, then you would want to go ahead and I've seen this different ways. I've seen this either through payroll, or however it's documented with your business administration. And really, I think every school district has different business administrations. If you are a charter, for instance, you might be working through like Red Apple or another organization that helps with your financials and your grants. So, okay. And then, yes, definitely, Stephanie, if you have any additional questions, and you can always email any of us if you have a question, and we're more than happy to help you.
Thanks, Kathy. I just wanted to add one thing onto this, in that your reimbursement request documentation can come in the form of a receipt or a ledger. But either way, whatever documentation you have, just write on there that it's Prevention Block Grant, and give us some information as to what that funding was used for, just to avoid any confusion and back and forth. So I will just briefly mention that I know that a number of you are new to Utah Grants. This may be your first year working in Utah Grants. So I just wanted to provide you with a link that has all kinds of documents that walk you through different tasks within Utah Grants. So I wanted to point that out to you, that this is a resource for you. And then of course you can always reach out to us as well if you have any questions.
Sorry, Clarissa, can I ask a question really quick before you go into that, just about the funding part?
Yes.
So if we, so we've asked for money for bullying prevention, and we kind of split it up equally between, this is what we think we would use in this school year, and this is what we would use next school year. And so our amount, is it okay if that, like, if we don't use as much this year and it, some of that funding is used for the 25-26, like, is there any requirement to stick exactly to how it was written, how much we use each year?
No, you do not have to stick to that. So as long as you spend the funds within the grant cycle, then that's fine. So if you end up spending more next school year, and as long as it's spent by June 30th, 2026, you're good.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy, it looks like we also
there is one more question.
thanks.
And I'm
Yes.
sorry, the link didn't work, so I will check the chat. So someone asked if this all can be submitted through Utah grants. In other words, they don't have a separate financial report as well.
Yes, and so I just responded to that. So when you submit for reimbursement, you'll upload your receipts into Utah Grants, after which we will go ahead and review those. And if there's any discrepancy or if we need additional information, we may send it back to you. But the more you're able to, on your end, make it really transparent as to what that reimbursement is for, and make sure you label it Prevention Block Grant. And as Clarissa said, you can submit the ledger, or you can also just submit the receipts.
Thanks. And so all reporting, with one exception, will be done through Utah Grants. So that's all your financial reporting. That leads me to the next portion, and that is the end of year report, where we will again ask you kind of for a narrative of how you spent the funds. And so I have here a link to our end of year report. So you can see the questions. However, it will come to you in the format of a Qualtrics survey. And so I'm just going to click on this. Can you still see my screen okay? Okay, great. These are the questions that we'll be asking. If you received a Prevention Block Grant award last year, you'll notice that the questions are pretty much the same. We've made a few tweaks here and there, and those tweaks are in yellow. But other than that, it's the same as last year. And so we'll ask you about how you spent the funds, how you measured the plan's effectiveness. We'll ask you about the data that you have that demonstrates any increased positive outcomes for students. And then we will ask you specifically about any risk and protective factors that you increased and decreased. We will also ask you to refer back to your application goals and just give us a response as to whether or not you felt you met your specific goals that you talked about in your application. And then we'll ask you for any success stories that you may have that showcase how important this funding is. We'll also ask you if you're willing to give us some additional information to help us with positive behaviors plan and suicide prevention reporting, and not just reporting, but just it helps us to know how we can better support other districts and charters across the state. So that is all optional though. So if you choose not to answer that, and then that's okay, but we do value your feedback, and so we do have that in there. That's the end of year report. Again, we'll be sending that out to you when the time comes for it to be due. Can you still see my screen okay? I just switched tabs. Okay, perfect. So that'll be due. So you'll have two reports due. Kind of think of it as a mid-year report. That'll be due August 1st, 2025. And so that will be a good opportunity for you to check in and see how things have been going with your implementation up to that point. So it can be a really good reflection time for you to determine whether or not you want to make adjustments for the upcoming school year, then will be a final end of year report on August 4th, 2026 for you to report on that previous year. Melissa, you have a question.
Yes, my question was, you had mentioned that that's going to come out when we're getting to that point of it being due. Is it at all possible for us to even just get a PDF of what you're looking for and what you would like us to be considering? It just helps us so much to be collecting these artifacts and sort of these pieces along the way, and before the summer hits, right? Because in the summer we're reporting all this, but that school year's already gone. So yeah, we're collecting our goals, but I know you mentioned some of those other things, success stories, things like that. I'd love to just see maybe those details, and then we can collect, and be ready for that summer report.
So I just put that in the chat for you. It's for everyone.
Yes.
So now you have
Thank
it
you.
Now you can access that Google Doc that I just shared. I have it as a view only, I believe. If you run into any access issues, let me know. But you should be able to view that, and we'll send it out again with a recording of this webinar as well. Okay.
Thank you.
And that's a great suggestion for us. Thanks for bringing that up, Melissa.
All right, so we want to talk a little bit about considerations for evaluation, and I will start off by talking about kind of your process evaluation. So we'll get into outcome evaluation in a second. These are things to collect along the way, and that you may want to, as you're collecting this information, make little course adjustments. And some of these, especially the first few bullet points, these are more outputs, less evaluation, but they can help you in determining information as to whether or not something needs to shift or change as you're implementing your plan. So if you're collecting the number of program hours, that's an example of an output, and that can be helpful in process evaluation. The number of activities you're providing, number of students served. Maybe you're looking at attendance. So if you are implementing I believe we have a STEM program implementation that we have funded. You're looking at, okay, what are our attendance rates? Are we getting, how many students are attending? Do we need to do more to invite and encourage students to come and participate in the program? So that's something to be looking for. And then we also encourage you to think about attrition. So how many students are starting the program versus and are they continuing to come? And so that's something else to consider as well. And you may need to make some adjustments. Satisfaction surveys, you can do that throughout. Again, make sure that you are familiar with your district or charter's policies related to surveys, and that you're following those policies, but that can be helpful information to make some adjustments. And then throughout the process, ask yourselves, do the activities that we're carrying out now, are they matching the plans as outlined in the application? And if we need to make adjustments, does that require a budget revision request? And if so, you'll need to talk to us about that. We also want you to really think about outcome evaluation. So this is more less process, but more of okay, is what we're doing working? And so there are a number of different ways to think about that. So one is you're considering short-term outcomes, and that's probably what you're mostly considering for this grant cycle because it is a short grant. A lot of times long-term outcomes, especially in prevention, that's going to take years to accomplish. So you want to focus on your short-term outcomes. Are we making progress there? And then hopefully within years, we'll see in our SHARP survey, for example, some longer-term outcomes, such as reduced student use of tobacco. But you can also see that in your incident reports. Are there fewer students being caught vaping on campus? That's an outcome that you can look at. But as far as other short-term outcomes that you can measure are we decreasing risk factors in the students that we serve? Or more easily to measure, what might be more easy to measure is, are we increasing the protective factors? And that's a really good area of focus to help move the needle in accomplishing your longer term outcome goals. Are we seeing reduced behavior incidents? Are we seeing an increase in school attendance? Are we seeing an increase in academic achievement? These are all things that you can see more of that short term on that short term basis. All right. Are there any questions about evaluation before I move on to this next section? Okay, so we want to give you the opportunity to collaborate to this. So I guess maybe this is our first collaborative opportunity. And we want to give you that opportunity to share what it is that you plan to do and to talk through your comprehensive prevention plans. So we are going to put you into breakout rooms for about let's go 10 minutes, and because I do want to make sure we have plenty of time for any other questions. So I am going to, in the chat, put in a Google Doc with the breakout room discussion questions. And we are going to ask you to share what it is, what's in your comprehensive prevention plan, and how your LEA is planning to use the block grant funds. We want you to share what successes you've experienced so far and any barriers that you are experiencing as you work on prevention initiatives. And then how are you involving your community stakeholders in the process? We have multiple group tables on this Google Doc. And so you can go ahead and write your notes directly into this. You have editing rights. And I am going to open up the breakout rooms so that you can go ahead and start collecting. Hey, welcome back, everyone. We hope that was helpful and to be able to hear what others are doing and to hopefully brainstorm and strategize together. We'd love to hear from somebody. If anyone, let's have a couple of people share a little bit about what it was that you discussed.
I can share from group one. It was just cool to see all three of us are using Panorama at our schools, just to track students, their academics, their attendance, intervention plans that teachers put in place. It's been awesome. Not all of us are helping pay for that with this grant, but two of the three of us are helping, using some of this money to help pay for Panorama, which has been an amazing tool, just to even be able to track our students and just see where they're at and see who needs help and who we need to be focusing on with some of our prevention efforts.
That's great. Thank you. Who else is willing to share?
You could call on some groups.
All right. Can someone from group, let's see, we just heard from someone from room 1. How about room 4?
Now I can talk about group 4. We are going to be using our grant funds to work on our PBIS, kind of preventive behavior stuff in our district. We're going to hire a prevention specialist to help with some training as well as school-based consultation. Looking at South San Pete, they are going to be engaging in some trauma-informed practices training. And then I didn't catch our military school, what they were going to be using their funds for, but lots of prevention stuff going on.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's Let's hear from one more group. How about room 5? Anyone from room 5 want to share? Or is willing to share, even if you don't want to?
I can. I'll just summarize briefly a little bit. So one of the things I was excited to hear about, Ogden Prep has created an after school program, and this will be able to allow kids to do that at no cost. Our district, we're using it for mostly tier 1 social emotional learning curriculum. But our barrier to get to that question is not necessarily always whether or not a school has a curriculum, what we've seen this year, because we used it last year for that. But do they feel like they have the time, or will they prioritize making time to use the curriculum that is supplied? So that's kind of our focus this next year. And also some teacher training at Walden. They're using it for a position or two, it sounds like, to kind of target some of the prevention work there.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing your not only how you're using the funds, but some of the barriers that you're anticipating. And I think that that's probably a barrier that a number of schools are experiencing. Just the, hey, how do we fit this in with all of the other things? So that may be a good opportunity for us to, or a good topic for us to collaborate and strategize over in a future collaborative meeting. Well, I want to now open it up in the remaining 10 minutes to provide you with the opportunity to ask any questions that you may still have that haven't been answered yet. And so feel free to put your questions in the chat or to just come off mute and ask your question verbally.
So I have a question about indirect costs. This was something that I don't think we actually put on our initial budget, but when you guys came back with the revised budget, that was included. So, there will be various time involved with coming to meetings and reporting and things like that for the grant. Is that what that line item is intended for? Or do you have any types of guidance about what to use for indirect cost and how to submit that appropriately through Utah grants for the financials?
So I'll try to answer that question. My understanding is that indirect costs it's negotiated between the USBE and I believe the business administrator. And so there is this understanding that unless the grant has specifically written into it that indirect costs are unallowable, the business administrator is able to, I guess, basically request reimbursement for kind of some of those overhead expenses. So you won't have to worry about that. And that is just automatically goes into the Utah grant system based on that negotiated price. And Tanya or Tina or Kathy, feel free to add any additional details.
Yeah, you said it well. That's correct. That's what those indirect cost rates are. And I would connect with if you have any questions about them or what they could be used for, I would just connect with your BA.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Great question. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
My question is, I believe the amount that was rewarded to us was different than our requested amount, and they're just slightly different. But I also know there was, if I understood the grant correctly, there was a separate offering for implementing positive behavior plans. Am I understanding that correctly? And is it listed out specifically in which portion is for that and which portion is for the requests we made?
So I'll try to answer. I think there might be two questions within that question. So your positive behaviors plan, that has automatically gone out to the funding for the positive behaviors plan has gone out to all LEAs that went out in the September allotment. So LEAs did not have to apply for the block grant funding to receive the positive behaviors plan funding. And so each school receives $4,000 for positive behaviors plan. And that came through in September, and it's coded as ECSN, which stands for Electronic Cigarette and Nicotine Prevention. So if you see that, that is intended for positive behaviors plan. It's a little bit confusing. As far as if the funding is slightly different than what you requested, we should have explained the difference in our award email to you. If you still have questions about that, please reach out to me and I can get more specific with it.
Thank you.
Yep.
If I don't see that we have an ECSN allotment, what do I need to do to follow through to get it in the future?
Please email me and we will need to fix that this year. And I'd like to get that fixed this year. So you should have, I believe every school has, but if you run into any issues, please reach out to me and I'll put my email. Well, my email will be on the last slide so you can.
Okay, so just to make sure I understood correctly, that 4,000 is separate from the grant amount in our award.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the school receives it separately, but the reason that it's folded into this process is because you can use those funds also if you're a block grant recipient to work on your comprehensive prevention plan. So if you, for example, have hired somebody with that funding or pay a stipend, that person can also be utilized to help with your comprehensive prevention planning. So that's the difference, but every school receives that positive behavior funding.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Sorry.
And then, Tanya, can I clarify on suicide prevention funds? Because I've had a few questions. So suicide prevention funds, like the positive behavior plan, is a direct flow, no application process. And it should have landed in your accounts on November 27th, which is the November allotment memo. However, it may be a little complicated this year. So what you'll do is I put the flow in the chat, but when you go into Utah grants, it will be in the payment section and it will be listed as direct flow, no application. And there were 7 different funding streams that funded the FY25 suicide prevention funds, but all schools will have been funded at 1,000 per school. If you have any questions or if you need me to walk you through to find where your funding is, just go ahead and send me an email and I can help you through that process.
Thank you, Kathy. Other questions? We still have 4 minutes.
You had mentioned in an email that there would be an award letter in Utah grants. I don't think we've received it. Have those been put into Utah grants yet? We have multiple people who are in Utah grants as a charter, so I'm just trying to figure out what to expect.
Yes, that is a very good question. So there is a multi-step process for those award letters to happen on USVE's end. So it is partially completed. There are just a few things that our accounting team needs to finish up for that final approval award letter to go out. We did speak with them this morning and I know that they are prioritizing it. So you should hopefully be seeing those award letters in Utah grants hopefully by the end of next week. Fingers crossed.
Great, thanks.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, then we can wrap this up just a couple minutes early. We will be sending this recording out to all of you as well as the slides so that you have access to the links that we shared today. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I have Tanya, Kathy, and my contact information listed here, and we are happy to help in any way that we can. So thank you so much. We look forward to working with you and keep an eye out for additional information on upcoming collaborative meetings.